Misses a clutch, turns a corner, has a win!
So we're going to do a little mailbag today and let it guide us. So these are all things that you guys have brought up, or they've been brought up on some Facebook groups that some people recommended. And the first one I want to start with is pretty straightforward. So let's get to the mailbag. First one is Demar and Lowry hooking up. And someone said the Lakers. And it was on a Facebook post. They were talking about the Lakers. And I was just saying, like, the money's crazy if you try and do the Lakers. Like, I played around with it for a bit. And Monique was saying, like, how great it would be to have Lowry go to get, like, work with DeMar to get him a ring. And eventually, even though I said the money thing, I just agreed. I said, like, absolutely. So we couldn't have won in 2019 without DeMar being such an elite player and a classy pro. If that's the outcome of KLow leaving, me crying in my number 7 jersey, I guess I could learn to support it. And I'm referring to, like, if they go off together and somehow get DeMar a championship. So the next one comes from AZN Swag. And at first he's talking about Scotty Barnes versus Suggs, which has been, like, a conversation for weeks now, and certainly, like, it's the crux of my channel. So let's take a look at the Jarrett Allen thing that he brings up, though, because that's been a major one. This can't be done until free agency, but if you look at what we get from the draft and what we already have, Chris Boucher is only $7 million a season, and Jarrett Allen wants $20 million a season, or at least, like, a contract that works out to that over 5 years, they figure. He's young, he's a great athlete, he's going to be awesome, but he's basically Boucher. And this is my argument from episode 1. Why would we go back to rebuilding? We already have the same guy for $7 million. What we need is a wide-shouldered, wide-bodied center that can crash the boards and hustle energy, maybe get offensive boards. Allen does some of that, but he's not the bruiser that we kind of need to complement Boucher. That's why I've stated that the draft choice of Evan Mobley kind of scares me. Like, having a chance at Mobley scares me because, again, it takes us out of going for it. And I think we've created a 2-year window to go for it. This is why I've said, like, it's not a done deal that Kyle Lowry leaves in a sign and trade. I'm hoping we keep him and run it back. And then trading up and down, don't forget, I said, like, we're not going to be trading up and down with Kobe Allman. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the guy that takes Mobley. And no one would be, but everyone thinks he'll move Allen. I don't know why he wouldn't at least sit on him until the trade deadline, because the value will be higher there. Next one comes from John Hamilton, and we talked about some coaches that I couldn't remember the names of. Chris Finch, the head coach of the Timberwolves, and Jama Malalea. Don't think I even said that right. He's with Golden State, player development guy. We discussed Suggs and Barnes, and then we discussed number 2 picks. And we got one for Matt Thomas and one for TD. And so we get to pick 2 back-to-back in this draft unless we move them. And I've made a list, a playlist of all the number 2s that you guys have suggested to me. I've checked out most of them, and I suggest you guys do the same. And I've listed Amateur Hour Sports because they have a video for that, but also if you're looking for a place to go to the draft, I'm told Twitch channel should be good there. So I'm gonna check them out on Twitch, and yeah, we'll see who we get number 2 in the draft here. It'll be interesting. So next up, we're gonna discuss the difference between JV and Steven Adams, because that's what you guys were asking me about. Is like, what the heck is the difference between these two? Why flop them? There are a few differences. First, I just want to say, like, obviously the Grizz get a 10th overall pick, which is going to be a great player this year. The Pelicans can still get a crazy player at 17. Like, the players, there's going to be, like, Jokic was just the MVP, guys, a 2nd round pick. Like, it's going to happen again and again, and eventually we're going to have an undrafted MVP. Bledsoe is a huge part of this. Moving Bledsoe and Adams extra $3 million, I think it's 3, not 2, mil from Jonas's contract, allows the Pelicans to be below the cap, which means they can sign free agents to more money. So then it brings us to these two guys. How is JV different? Well, the biggest thing is JV's less money, but JV is also 1 year less on his contract. The reason that 1 year is important is because it gets him out of the way of this guy, Jackson Hayes. And I know all of you guys think that he should be targeted in a trade, but they're not going to part with him. Anyway, we got talking a little bit about Jackson Hayes in another trade, so let's go to that. We were discussing some things after my video on friends in Florida, and trading down. And then we were talking about Siakam, and we talked about NBA Chef's podcast about Siakam. And then we talked about how some of the centers that we predicted to move got moved. And we were bummed that they went between these teams and not to us, because we were kind of hopeful we might get Steven Adams. But alas, our window passed to use those types of contracts. Other teams capitalized. Griffin did a great job with this move. So what the heck is it that Griffin is up to? Well, I'll tell you what he's up to. He's up to making minutes and room for two young guys that have played better than he thought they would originally. Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jackson Hayes, who we already discussed. I don't think either of these guys are available. And I've always maintained that I think Kyle's coming back because he wants to stay with the team that he helped to groom and try and run it back over the next 2 years, which is his window. Now, a lot of people are saying that 30 mil a season is too much for KLow. But they're not doing their homework when they say that, because if we keep KLow, we can probably get him for 50 mil a year, and we'll make that front heavy and decline over 2 years. We can sign him to 2-year contracts. If we sign and trade him, we have to sign him to 3 years. If we sign him to 3 years, he's 90 mil because we won't keep him. If he wants to be signed and traded, then he can make more money, and KLow can say this. So what's going to happen in the offseason, because the franchise's relationship is so good with Kyle Lowry, is they're going to look at the roster and they're going to say, okay, market value for you is X. We'll match it for 2 years and you stay with us. And KLow might say, you know what? I don't think we have the pieces. Why don't you guys sign and trade me? It's been swell, and I will be back to coach later and maybe help do some color commentating or something within the franchise. And they'll part ways, and the franchise will honor KLow by giving him a big payout and sign and trading him. What I don't buy is that if 30 mil a season is worth it to the Lakers and the Clippers and the Pelicans and Philly and all these other teams, how are Raptors fans who have got the opportunity to watch this guy front and center not stoked to keep him with us? Like, it blows my mind that we're not more excited to keep KLow. He's a 6-time All-Star. He's led us to a championship. He's got the DNA to hand the culture down to the next generation, and he loves it here. Those are all the factors I need, and his contract's favorable at 25 mil per season for 2 years. Super favorable. He can continue to groom our guys, and I have no problem giving KLow minutes in the playoffs. Are you kidding me? We have the guard depth to give him minutes off during the season and utilize him in the playoffs. We totally have the ability to do that. Anyhow, let's move on. If they're not going to give up Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Jackson Hayes, who are they willing to move? And the answer to that has to do with two things. KLow might move for a guy midway down, someone re-signing, that the Pelicans can sign him more money than no one else, and it's Josh Hart. They can sign him to 11.2 because they came below the cap. They own his bird rights. So he could be used towards KLow's 25 mil a season to balance the contract and make sure we don't lose out. And that might be 30 if we sign and trade him, obviously. 11.2 mathematically is just slightly more than anyone else can pay him. Okay? So that's an important number. Now, they'll want to move Hart because they have a logjam of big. So now, especially now that they brought Jonas in, they want to play Zion. They want to play Ingram. They want to mitigate how much money they're spending behind those two contracts. And Hart is one of the guys that takes minutes from that spot, which is also the spot they have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I think the way that they actually do this is like this. So within 19 days, you could see Jonas Valanciunas moving, which is nutty to me. And you could see Josh Hart coming our way. And that's a really good return for KLow. Like, exceptional. And I know it's not fancy, but we get a proven wide-bodied big who can start and play situationally. And we already know that he's willing to do what the team needs. So if Boucher starts because it's the right choice, or Boucher finishes a game, it's no problem. We have a better lineup to deal with the fact that Jonas has trouble dealing with the pick and roll. And I'm telling you, I watched Grizzly games, and Jonas Valanciunas is not going to hurt your team. In the playoffs, he's a bruiser, all those things. Josh Hart's a total gamer. This is a good trade for us. If we're going to move Kyle, I think it might be why we saw Adams get moved to the Grizzlies, is because the Raptors wanted to do this deal with New Orleans. You're going to see Lonzo Ball get signed and traded. KLow's going to get signed and traded, but not until 19 days later, because we have to wait for Jonas, because the trade exception day has a time frame because Jonas got traded. So we have to wait. So this is what the team would look like if we did this trade. And remember, it's all about the Larrys. Like, even for a guy like me that wants to keep KLow so badly, and I think we're competitive with him, very much so. In fact, we're not just competitive, we're competitive for years because we keep developing talent under mentors like KLow. And as long as they can play playoff minutes and we can make it to the playoffs without needing to really work them, like, I mean, rest them throughout, and they just help us develop players, like, that's enough. All we need from KLow is him to go to war for us in the playoffs. That's it. So that's not a bad lineup. That's a good return, and I still like Scotty Barnes in there, although I know a couple of you are picturing Jalen Suggs in there. But this is a trade that would help us keep our 4th overall pick, give us an insane bench, at least the beginnings of it, with Boucher, Trent, and Malachi, and Josh Hart. That's a pretty solid... this is a crazy team. There's no doubt about it. And you could bring Freddie to the natural point guard and put... obviously, Gary Trent in there at the shooting guard position to start. It's a crazy lineup. So if this is what we're seeing the workings of, this could be a big deal for the Raptors because you can use Boucher and Valanciunas interchangeably. Anyway, guys, enjoy the draft tomorrow. Be well, and thanks for all the comments that inspired this.
This is Chef's Kiss approved. Mwah!
I don't even know where you're sitting at. Like.